I'm a big believer that what you send out into the universe is received. So when you talk about our team, yes, 75% of our leadership team are women. More than 50% of our company is female. And I think it's very rare in the technology industry.
Yes. Welcome back to the Women on the Move podcast. I'm your host, Sam Saperstein. In this episode, I speak with Li Haslett Chen, the founder and CEO of Howl, a technology platform that democratizes access to retail's next frontier, social commerce. Under Li's leadership, Howl has been named one of Fast Company's most innovative companies and one of the most promising AI companies by Forbes. Li has been recognized as a retail disruptor by the Financial Times, a World Economic Forum technology pioneer, and included on Ad Age's 40 Under 40. I'm so excited to speak with Li and hear all about her remarkable background. Li, welcome to the Women on the Move podcast. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to chat today.
We have a lot to talk about. So would love to start off with your career, your early career journey before you got to Howl. Can you tell us what you did and some of the key milestones along the way?
Yeah, it's going to sound a little nerdy.
We like that.
But I think my passions really drove both my early career and why I started Howl. I love content. I love retail. I love data science.
Love it.
Love systems-based thinking. So I think this idea of media and retail and technology kind of grounds everything I've done in my career. Before Howl, I ran marketing at a startup called Moda Operandi. I started a company called Narrative, which is really the foundation for Howl today. And all of that is based in helping creatives and helping people who are really passionate about retail build businesses.
Oh, that's great. And so what drew you to the combination of that? Is there some thread you can kind of pull from one experience to the next and why you kind of made those moves?
I think the reason why I'm in the industry at all started with my family and my upbringing. So I grew up in Beijing in the early 90s. And in a history lesson of sorts, that was when Reform and Open happened. So it's when China really opened to the world. I remember being, 5 years old and us getting our first refrigerator. And I think all of that made me feel so in awe of products and services and how it really changes our lives. So I always knew I wanted to be in this industry. And at the same time, I never imagined I would be an entrepreneur. I think it really started when I was running marketing at the e-commerce startup that I was at before founding Howl. And one of the venture capitalists and investors of that business asked me if there was something that I wanted to build. And I think the reality is he saw some of those tendencies in terms of the way that I would attack problems or think about building technology within this company.
Yeah.
And, within a year of him asking me that question, we had our first check, started building our first company. Wow. And that was really the pathway that made all of this possible.
What I love is that you described to me having a consulting background also. So you knew the problem solving method for sure, data, and that entrepreneurship spark seems to have been created there at that first jump that you took. And then amazing that someone else kind of saw that in you and sounds like really encouraged you to pursue that. Was there an aha moment that you had that you thought, yeah, I could do that. I'd love to do that.
So I studied biochemical engineering, had that kind of like STEM background, but I also grew up in a family of creatives. And while I was at Columbia, I also did a lot of internships in the city that was very grounded in the creative industries. And I think it's that combination of math, science, and kind of creative industries that allowed me to approach problems in a different way.
Yeah.
I'll have to say my time at McKinsey was grueling. I did not know what McKinsey was before I applied to work there.
Interesting. Okay.
Which is maybe a strange route.
Yes, most people will know what they're getting into.
But I was actually working at Vogue at the time, and one of the editors there, her husband worked at Bain, which is another consulting firm.
Yes.
And she and I were talking about my career, and I was like, I don't know if I want to end up in editorial, but I have this combination of interests. And she thought that retail consulting might be the fit.
Yeah, that was a great idea.
I tried to work at Bain, went to the application page, it was all closed. So then Wikipedia told me that there was BCG at McKinsey.
I love that.
And the consulting industry is quite small.
Yes.
Ended up applying there and was at McKinsey for about 3.5 years. It definitely gave me some of that rigorous disciplined thinking that we put into use today. And I would say one of the best parts about McKinsey is the emphasis on communication.
Yes.
And on storytelling. And in being able to not just have a strategy, but be able to communicate that out to others.
I love it. Well, we didn't get to overlap there, which is a shame, but I'm glad we were talking today. Okay, so before Howl, you also founded a company called Narrative. Tell us about that. So what was your first foray on your own into entrepreneurship?
Yeah. Narrative was a company that connected large publications with businesses that could help them better monetize their shopping recommendations. It was my first foray as a startup. It was really exciting in terms of really the initial success that we had right out the gate. And I think there was a real moment where I almost didn't build Howl because Narrative was so successful. We won a lot of awards. I think we had real product market fit. There was an AI engine that we built behind this, and I think we were very much leading that pack. But at the back of my head, there was always this thought of, what if we could give more people access? What if it wasn't just the largest publications and companies in the world? What about other content creators and creatives who also have a perspective on what people should buy and what they love and they want to share it and make money from it? Could we bring a lot of the technology and the insight that we developed at Narrative to a much larger ecosystem?
So you wanted to go more to individuals and really enable them to share their stories, work with brands, be creators themselves versus the bigger companies.
Yeah, it's really about broadening and really setting possibly a larger ambition to what we built. Going from hundreds of customers who are very large to tens of thousands, millions of customers who would use our platform, make money, be able to build a career using our platform.
So we're going to spend a lot of time talking about Howl. So I'd love for you to tell us, what is Howl, describe the platform, and what problem is it solving for its customers?
Howl is a marketplace that connects people with something that they want to talk about, promote, share with their community, with the brands that make those products and services. So it could be that I'm obsessed with my 3-pound laptop because I am walking around all over the city taking meetings and I need something light. It could be a creator that loves this sunscreen that doesn't leave a cast because she has darker skin. It could be sneakerhead discords or folks on YouTube talking about the latest Samsung Galaxy launch. It's really anything that, as we say, you want to howl about and you want to share, that now you can make money from promoting those goods and services. So if you are a creator or a person that joins Howl, the first thing that you'll see is a list of brands and products that you might love to post about. Once you're matched, you use our shops, our links to promote those goods and services, and you'll receive bonuses, commissions, referrals, and compensation for brands to be able to pay you for those activities. What we see is that most creators on Howl are able to make a real living. That means that you're earning tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year from promoting and working with brands that you already love to talk about.
That is unbelievable. Talk about an industry that did not exist before, a livelihood that never existed before. That is amazing. So I'm a content creator. I love a certain brand. How do I get matched with my favorite brands?
It starts with what you're already using today. So we're a big believer in honesty and that being grounded in the products that you already love.
Got it.
So oftentimes the prompt might be, what did you use today? What are some products that you used and love today?
Yeah.
Or if you're walking around and you have your phone, like take a picture of something that excites you. And that can ground the first few partnerships. What we also see is that with creators who are already very successful, sometimes it's helpful to open their eyes and widen their horizons as well. So as an example, there was a beauty creator on Howl who was already making more than $100,000 a year, selling millions of dollars of products.
Incredible.
And you could say like, great, that is a success story. But when we looked at our data and compared creators of the same size who were male and female, we actually saw that male creators made more money.
In the beauty space or just in general?
In
their
general.
other. Okay. And why?
And it was surprising because I think that creators and influencers are often associated with being female. It turns out that male creators are making a lot of content about consumer electronics products, which have higher price points. So higher price points, conversion. And then we talked to this creator and we're like, hey, do you have a phone? Do you have a TV? Did you help make purchasing decisions in your family about consumer electronics products and these household items? And of course she did. Of course she did. And there was this question of like, okay, but if I posted out this on Instagram, is that going to be weird? Like my audience just expects me to give them beauty recommendations.
Right.
How do I maybe think about expanding that? Is that something that they even think that I have a voice in?
Yeah.
And the reality is she had very strong opinions about all of these topics. And with some encouragement, we connected her to a very large consumer electronics brand. And last fall, she became the #1 driver of television sales within the platform.
That's unbelievable.
And it was her first time posting about TVs.
That is so powerful that you can play a role in doing that for so many reasons, for her livelihood, for the people who hear from her. That is just great. And you don't see that from other platforms. No one's stepping in to help their users be better.
Yeah. And I think what's so interesting is that this creator took a totally different perspective to talking about TVs than what you might see. It wasn't about just the technological specs. It was, hey, here's how it looks like in my home. This is why I like the design. These are the considerations I had to the size and to the placement.
Right.
And these are the companies that I also thought about using. So it was a different set of criteria that she was interested in, and that connected so deeply with her audience. It was a very different perspective than the content that already existed. So I think it's always important to ask, why do I love something? And if you can explain that and tell a story and also bring some fun into that, then you're qualified.
And you're bringing such an inclusive perspective now, not just audience and people perspective.
Absolutely.
You know, when I think about the way brands have to control the message today, it's not the same as it used to be, right? In pre-social media days, you had fewer channels. You could really control your message a lot better. And now consumers can take over your message and certainly talk about your brand in many ways. How do you as Howl control for that or make sure people, the creators on your platform, are doing what brands think is the right thing?
Well, I think it starts getting into the DNA of what is Howl and why is Howl, and also how we are different than most of the platforms that creators had access to before.
Yep.
And at the center of that is inclusivity. And I think you're talking about what are inclusive marketing practices, and it starts with inclusive business practices. There have been platforms that connect brands and creators, but they are pretty notorious within that influencer marketing industry for gatekeeping or for central casting. And that really limits the type of people who get access to brand deals and to sponsorships and referral dollars. Howl does not have a apply now, exclusive, kind of elite status.
Right, filters.
And that really filters out who I think traditionally has been deemed like the faces of brand partnerships or of marketing. Today, we have about 17,000 creators who have signed up and used Howl. Earlier this summer, we crossed a really exciting milestone. Over $150 million of earnings have been paid out to creators who use Howl. And that's because they've generated over $500 million of sales.
That's incredible.
Of retail goods. So I think the numbers really speak for it themselves when it comes to how different groups and individuals and identities show up in marketing, and that brands should absolutely provide clarity into why their products are good and why people should care. But when it comes to how this product fits into my life, why you should care about it, we see that the more there are scripts, the more that there's control, the more people see through it and get called out on social media.
It's so interesting, when you're doing brand research or market research for a product, you really want to get close to the consumer and you want to understand how they're going to use your products. You want to watch them and their element. Maybe they're at home using it. And that can be really difficult to do. And not a lot of brands, I think, invest in that. But what you're describing almost goes right to the heart of that. So you're seeing an actual creator use a product. You're getting so close to that, the look and feel and the way the affinity shows up for the product. I think that's really fascinating. How did you get to that point where you thought we could do this? Like, tell us about that social commerce kind of end-to-end experience that you knew you could plug into.
Yeah. So I think it was grounded first in narrative, right? So if you're familiar with Wirecutter or Good Housekeeping, you know that it's grounded in product reviews.
Yes.
What we saw was that there was an influx of people every month going to the narrative website and asking us, can we use your links? Like, I see your links on the New York Times website. And I see that you're powering commerce in a way that feels net new. Can we use your product? I make the same kind of recommendations on YouTube. I have a channel that has 270,000 followers and millions of views. And I also want to be able to work with brands in the same way, where it's not scripted, it's not controlled, but I can make a real living from talking about these products.
Yeah.
So it took kind of broadening that focus and also asking ourselves, okay, how do you build a really easy to use, intuitive platform for, tens of thousands of people?
Right.
And how do you scale to, billions of transactions and dollars flowing through the system? And that's really what led us to build Howl and to imagine that.
That's incredible. Is it fair to say then your idea for Howl came from the narrative community and customers you were seeing there?
It came from, I think, the curious minds of the internet.
Great.
Meaning, in the lens of your question, like, is Howl B2B, is it B2C? We're B2B2C, which means it may not always be obvious when someone is a Howl customer today. They're using our infrastructure, they're using our marketplace, but we very much sit in service of their business.
Yes.
And it is the creator and the brands they work with that very much take the forefront. So I would say that Howl almost wasn't built because narrative was very successful. And there was a lot of safety and clarity in what we were doing. We did not need to open up our marketplace to a totally different set and type of customer.
Yeah.
But I think there was a gut feeling that I had as a founder in reading all of the inquiries, in seeing all of the interest.
Gold. That's where it's at, right?
Yes.
To understand demand in a market, you have to get to that level of real need and customer noise, if you will, or customer signals, which people are looking for all the time. So the fact that you were right there and had an outlet to do that, I think is really incredible. You mentioned here and referred to some risk taking.
Yeah.
And you also told me before we started this, you've taken other risks in your background and in your career. Where does that come from? Where does your comfort with taking risks and maybe doing what you didn't think you would do? Where do you think that came from for you?
Risk is interesting. I grew up doing gymnastics. Maybe it's apt because the Olympics are in a few weeks.
Yes.
And I think what's interesting about having a sports background is that you take a lot of calculated risks. You have a coach that's standing next to you. You have a spotter. No one is trying to go into the air and fall down and hurt themselves.
Right.
Being able to know you have the trust and safety and support of a team, understanding that your job is really to listen, grow, try new things, and hopefully do it better every time.
Yeah.
That to me is risk taking.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Did you find, I mean, I'm so curious because gymnastics is such a intense, practicing all the time, as you said, people around you, really technique focused. Were there times where you felt like, okay, I do have that support. I am going to push myself. I'm going to see what else I can do. And does that sit with you now today as you're a founder?
It's a confidence game,
Yeah.
part of it. So one of the things that my coach used to say to me, especially after I messed up, if you don't believe it 100%, there's a 0% chance you'll succeed.
Oof.
So that belief, because it's hard. Building a company is hard. Doing flips in the air is hard.
Yes.
So I think the confidence of being able to start anything, whether it's the beginning of your day or going into a presentation or a set of meetings or whatever it is that you're trying to do, just taking that breath in and centering yourself. I'm a big believer in some of these mindfulness practices and saying like, okay, where am I feeling about this? Being honest about that, but also really centering yourself in the belief that you are prepared or that you've asked for support when you need it. That really grounds, I think, the day-to-day.
That's terrific.
And I do think it's important for you to be able to tell your team, like, hey, I feel really distracted today. And here are some of the things that you can help with, because we all have this large project and I want to be able to focus on these two things that I think are highest priority. And I want to enable and empower you to be able to focus on these other pieces. And how do we work together as one team to do that?
That is great. I mean, that's a level of communication. I think that's very special. I don't think that happens all the time in companies. But there's also a vulnerability there where you're saying, this is how I'm doing and this is where I want to focus. But you're also trusting a team, which I can really understand that whole consulting background now coming into the fore for you, because, you know, it really resonates with me as to how you describe that. When you think about Howl, what are some of your objectives, both near term and longer term?
Howl really exists to build a more inclusive social commerce system. Because it is this $1 trillion industry, and yet access is really given to the top 1%, we want to change that. We're not here to be middlemen who take egregious fees, to create gatekeeping. We're a fully transparent platform that creators use to work with world-class brands. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I hope that tens of thousands, millions of creators have found financial freedom.
That's great.
And have been able to build their own businesses using our technology. And we find that the more transparent our practices can be, and the more that people understand what they're worth and how to negotiate for that, how to find that, how to learn from others in terms of what's working, and also what to stay away from, those are a lot of the user experiences and products that we really prioritize within Howl.
So do you help creators understand what they could get paid for something or how to talk to brands, all the above?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing.
I actually think one of the more formative experiences I had, we talked about McKinsey, we talked about some of these bigger things, but when I was in college, I worked at Bloomingdale's.
Love them too.
And it was out of necessity. Like, I was broke. This is when internships were also generally unpaid.
Yes.
And I did not expect it to be so formative. It taught me two things. One, how to speak to customers.
Yes.
Going up to someone and asking them what they're looking for is a vulnerable experience.
Yeah.
And yes, they're there to buy something, but continuously opening that conversation and really paying attention to the information they're giving you, both verbal and physical cues, that's a whole collaboration. And it's more about them than is ever going to be about you. The second thing that I learned at Bloomingdale's was really what it means to be on a team.
Yeah.
And I think that I learned things about teamwork that maybe are bigger than what I even saw at a company like McKinsey. Why? When I first started working at Bloomingdale's, I had no idea what people like to buy. Like, I didn't know what sold. I didn't know the SKUs that were moving. I didn't know the promotions that were running. None of that.
Yeah.
It was really my fellow sales associates who really took me under their wing, and they're like, stay away from that, focus on this is what's moving. And I would watch them and I'm like, oh, that's how you sell.
That's great.
So I think the community aspect of what it means to learn from each other and taking that into social commerce has been one of the most important components of what we've built at Howl. So sharing what's selling for specific communities, also sharing the highlights and really incentivizing creators to share that news with each other. It doesn't need to be, I should say, a game where you're looking out for yourself.
Yeah.
And I think often creators feel pitted against each other or that there's only one spot. And the reality is that's not true. There's lots of dollars available for everyone, and brands would be excited to sell more things and have this rising tide versus this kind of isolated ecosystem.
Yeah, more narrow. I just love those stories. I can't believe you're such a young age working where you were doing this in retail, to have those really formative experiences that you can now talk about and use in your own company. It's just amazing. So tell me about your current team. And I will tell you, when I went on your website, I was very pleased to see it's a very female leadership team. So thank you for that. What is your leadership style? What do you think based on all the things you've described and learned, what is it that you're trying to convey to them on a daily basis, or even from a visionary perspective over time?
So I'm a big believer that what you send out into the universe is received. So when you talk about our team, yes, 75% of our leadership team are women. More than 50% of our company is female. And I think it's very rare in the technology industry.
Yes.
Was that purposeful? No. Was I likely sending out vibes or in the way that we
openness to receive it,
invited conversation about what we were building and why and for who? And did that create more diverse candidates coming into our leadership team and our company? Absolutely. So I think for anyone who's looking to build a business, it starts with the mission and vision. I think that's because our mission is really centered in inclusivity, that is naturally mirrored within our leadership team. And I would say within my leadership style, we continue to grow into it, right? So I think it's easy to think about what it means to set a vision and to allow others to build and to be creative. I'm a big believer that creativity is a team sport. There are practices and rituals that support that. So I would say as a leader, I set the vision, but I also set the culture.
Yeah, for sure.
And from a culture perspective, creativity and teamwork, that comes from great communication. Communication means agendas. It means not wasting each other's time. It means clarity. It means being explicit instead of implicit. It means being clear and concise. And the remote nature and fast-paced nature of how we work really means that the bar for all of this is even higher.
Yeah, there's a lot more to do. And you told me Howl is a remote company. you have your employees spread out. How do you use that both to your advantage? And then how do you just compensate for what you need to do when you're not in person? Like, tell me about both the pros and the cons that you're managing from that.
Yeah. So I think the pros is that it has helped us build an incredibly diverse team.
Oh, yeah.
So we have folks in Ireland, we have folks, in Oregon, in Florida, in New York, all over. And I think what we see is that the way that each city has their own personality, we're able to pull from the best of all of these different cities, experiences, backgrounds, companies in a way that could never have been possible if we had a office that was only in New York City. That said, time zones.
Always hard. And the farther, the harder.
Yes. And also, we've learned that there are certain activities that are better done in person. So, for example, at the beginning of a year, annual planning, strategic planning, debate is important. Being able to talk through ideas, to have jam sessions, to be able to work through things, that needs to happen on a regular basis. So for us, that's both annual and quarterly. We also see that there are different teams that do work better when they can meet in person more frequently than other teams. So what we see is that engineering generally okay with stand-ups and being remote.
Yes.
But some of the more creative teams, they do really well when they're sitting together, when marketing teams and editorial teams are building and looking and able to kind of pop over your shoulder and be able to have a laugh and have an idea come to life together.
Yeah, there's an energy with that.
Yes.
You really want to capture.
Energy is exactly the right word. And I think finding the zones where we can create that energy so that you can both enjoy a lot of the benefits that come with remote work, as well as still inculcate the energy that teams need. That's a real art.
Oh, I love that. That is great. So along the way, inevitably, you probably had some challenges that you might have not anticipated. Tell me about a time with Howl or narrative where you tried to go down a path that didn't quite work. And what was a challenge you were dealing with, and how did you pivot away from that?
I think the most challenging thing has been continuing to believe in building only what you love.
Versus what people are telling you to build?
There's a really great quote from Rick Rubin. And he says something along the lines of, if you don't love it, but you think someone else might, then you're already taking yourself off your path.
Ooh. Yes.
So it's not so much about someone else telling you to do it, but sometimes I think we all can be swayed to do what seems like is popular or what has made other people successful.
Yeah.
And that feels like it's a well-paved road. But there are going to be other moments where something is weird or hard or specific or unique and you love it. And that's your vision. And actually that produces a different kind of energy.
Yeah, for sure. Almost like a flow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You lose track of time.
And your customers can feel that too. I think the most important thing that I've learned as a founder over the past 2 years is that we need to focus on the things that make us unique. And in building stuff we love, our customers will love it too. And you'll attract the people who value the differences.
Yeah, I love that. So you've spoken to Medium and had an interview where you talked about disruption and innovation. And you said the innovative approaches you're taking at Howl to disrupt the industry really are significant. And I'd love for you to talk about what that means to you. What does disruption, particularly right now in your business and industry, mean?
Yeah. So there are a couple layers to the disruption. I'm going to start at the very kind of most foundational layer of this, which is data. The media industry, the advertising industry, retail, all of it is powered from a system of data attribution that says, if you produce this content, if you watch this video, then I will assign value as to whether or not it resulted in a sale. Attribution basically says, I'm going to create a measurement system for whether or not you produced value. ROI, return on investment. Google, Facebook, Meta, TikTok, they are great at attribution. These platforms are really built to maximize their own ability to take credit for what they've done within their advertising systems. Creators don't have thousands of engineers who are helping them correctly attribute the value that they've created for a brand. So the first thing that we did at Howl was build a world-class attribution system. It really allows creators to go head-to-head with large platforms so that they're not disintermediated, so that they are getting complete credit and full credit and fair credit for the results that they're generating. This is a large and fast-moving system.
Yeah.
One of the biggest ways that we're disrupting attribution in 2024 is the way that we're connecting to retail media. Retail media started with Amazon ads, and now it's a $20 billion space that's growing 50% year over year. Like, the numbers are staggering. And I would bet that most people listening to this right now have no idea what retail media is.
No, I think probably more explanation would be warranted. So tell us specifically what you're talking about and playing in.
Yeah. So retail media is premised on this idea that eventually cookies may go away. We've kind of heard about this, maybe even as consumers, and that the Metas and Googles of the world will be less effective in their ability to deliver advertising. In that landscape, Amazon, Walmart, Home Depot, Best Buy, any of the places where you might buy goods and services become more important advertising ecosystems for brands. So retail media is the business of these retailers becoming advertising companies. And by connecting into their technology stacks and connecting into industry-leading attribution on these new advertising playgrounds, we are giving creators first and equal access to really profitable and lucrative earnings opportunities.
It's incredible to think about. Do you think this could have happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or is this something unique now with the technology, even with consumer behavior, that's led us to this point?
Technology and also understanding. I think this is where narrative was such an important pathway to building Howl, because it was so deeply technical.
Right.
From a economic perspective, in terms of what this means as an economic engine, attribution, receiving credit for the work that you did, is the foundation for an equitable business. And I think because so many companies have been built without kind of this data foundation, no matter what you add on top, you're still just pulling from a smaller base. So attribution is disruption 1. And I would say disruption 2 is really around community.
Tell us more. In what way? What would be special or new?
Yeah. So on most platforms where you're, connecting with brands, it's quite isolated. So it is this feeling of I'm here to find something for me. And whether or not I'm successful falls entirely to my own skill set. And I think this is where learning from others, getting real-time notifications on what's happening, being able to parse the noise from what's reality. Because sometimes on social media, it looks like something's going viral. And then no one's making money from it.
Right.
So having an objective reality as to, hey, this is actually working, and then being incentivized to share it with others. So actually earning more money on Howl because you're sharing an insight and publishing it. And being able to really build community around your ability to share information with others and empowering others to be successful, that's how we really widen access and grow the system.
So if I'm a creator on Howl, I could see the people who are on my system, my platform, take a brand, use the brand, buy things, but also downstream what their users are also doing? Like, can I actually see the widening of the community beyond my own immediate users?
Yeah. One of the features that we've been talking a lot about internally is this idea that, let's say you have a smash and you know that this was your bestseller and you made $10,000 in a day, which is
unbelievable,
kind of normal for some creators.
Wow.
And the idea might come to you like, okay, I have this information, but do others? On Howl, what if by sharing this with 5 friends, we'll enable everyone to actually make more commission? So instead of making 10% of the sale, you all make 15% of the sale. So that's a way where incentives can actually empower people to share information.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Or perhaps you think this is exciting enough that you want to publish this to the Howl homepage so that anyone who's within that ecosystem might be able to see this information and learn from it.
That's amazing. It really feels like you're on the cusp of something that hopefully will power Howl, but that also could be used by others. The way you talk about just structuring that community and structuring the authentication, or just the way you're going to get referrals.
Yeah.
Do you ever think about, can you monetize that beyond the company for others to use?
What I love about the internet and what I love about, I think you're talking about how systems inspire other systems, right? And what I think is interesting is I've been inspired to build Howl, and there are a lot of mentors, but also other spaces that I see where this is normalized. And social commerce does not normalize community-based thinking and sharing today, but it might in the future. And what I would love is, yes, others join us in this revolution in social commerce, but what if you took it into a totally different industry and a totally different space?
Like
financial services.
Yes.
Like media. Like creative rights and data sharing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of practices that I think isolate creators and creatives and that weakens them. Whereas technology can enable sharing and access, and the ability for a kind of like centralized system to be able to deliver access, I think is an interesting like technology protocol.
It is. It's amazing to hear you talk about that. So what advice would you give to other leaders who are really looking to spark such change and then figure out a way to enable others to go forth and drive change as well?
My advice would be do what feels good to you. It's grounded in reality. There's my path, but what works for me could be completely different than how someone else wants to lead. And that's important. We shouldn't merge into one identity. There's not one right way.
Yeah. So Li, you recently joined the Warner Brothers Discovery Board. So now you also have board member on your background too. Tell me about that experience and what that means for you as a woman in the technology industry and about your ability to lead now through different ways.
Yeah. I was definitely not looking to join a board in the sense that I have a full-time job as a CEO. And as you know, most board members are, in their late 50s, mid 60s. They've had a whole career. And honestly, I never felt that, and I never considered that I might be qualified to join the Warner Brothers Discovery Board, right? It's a huge publicly traded company.
Yeah.
And I get a good number of questions every week on LinkedIn from people I don't know of, hey, how did you get on this board? And that's created its own kind of like interesting community for me. One thing that has been odd and slightly uncomfortable for me to notice is that in the past 2 years, only one woman has reached out to me.
most of the people who have are men, is what you're saying.
They're mostly men
Wow.
who are asking,
really
like, how
interesting.
do I get on a board? And I think what I've taken from that is like, oh, wow, you believe you're qualified to join a board.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about learning how to have the right conversations or meet the right people.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I've also had people, ask me to speak on panels, and it's the same question. How did you get on this board?
Mm-hmm.
My self-reflection is that it has something to do with my career and background, and
Yes.
the fact that I am a person who works in technology, in marketing, in media, in international. And those are the facets that position me to be qualified.
Mm-hmm.
But the more important thing is that there was a board seat that had opened, right? So Warner Discovery emerged out of the AT&T transaction, and they were welcoming new board members.
Mm-hmm.
So as we think about how women or how more diverse candidates go up for board seats or become founders or join leadership teams, it's really about, first and foremost, creating opportunities.
Yeah. You have to have that in the first place.
Yeah.
That's right.
I'm a huge advocate for setting term limits. So today, you can be on a board for 30 years.
Yeah. Yes.
It's much more normal in other countries to have 7 or 10-year term limits. It's not an age limit, it's a term limit.
Right.
And imagine if every 7 years there were new board members, how many people would have the opportunity to raise their hand?
Yep. And then we'd have to do more searches to find the right people for those.
Yes.
And the networks would have to be bigger.
Yes, exactly. And then I think the second piece is I got very lucky. I was profiled in Fast Company, and a recruiter saw, this top 10 execs, tech execs piece. But there are lots of highly qualified leaders who are not being profiled by the press. You could say, like, the press has a perspective in this and they could highlight different candidates. But I also think that there should be a database, a place where people can go, where it's not about networking or going to the right dinners, where you can raise your hand and say, here is my experience and this is why I'm qualified.
Yeah.
And there's nothing for you to feel afraid of, to be able to just join that community.
Yeah.
It's honestly shocking to me that this doesn't exist.
So, well, jpmorgan, we do maintain a database for people that we like to promote and share with our clients for board seats. But it is a networking game. So you have to be asked by clients to do that kind of thing. They have to want to have your recommendations. There are others who are building this too. But I think to your point, those seats have to be available, but all the other things have to happen before seats even open up. You have to be on panels. You have to be meeting people. You have to be in articles. You have to do so many other things kind of up the funnel to get to that placement. And so when we think about trying to improve that and support that overall, it's all those activities that you're describing that have to happen, and they have to happen together.
What if the jpmorgan database were democratized? How do we think about access to that?
Yes.
Yeah,
well,
I would love to work on that.
Well, we should pull you in. What you said about more men reaching out to you about the board than women is so interesting. It makes you wonder why, whether women just look at you and they say, oh, that's so aspirational. I could never do that myself. And men are thinking, just tell me how to do it and I'm going to try it too.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense for that?
In the past 2 years, I've had the opportunity to speak at panels and be invited to dinners. And usually it's in some way tied to increasing diversity on boards, or, I find myself being really attracted to organizations that want to promote access for women. When I'm at these dinner tables, it is shocking to me that you'll be talking to, the female CEO of a huge pharmaceuticals company, or the CMO at a really successful business, that's doing hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And the tentativeness, the questions around, what kind of programming or further education should I get before even considering putting my name.
The credential problem. I need to do something more.
Yes. And there's a whole weight and burden of feeling like, well, I have my full-time job and then I'm supposed to get these credentials, so there's no way that I would be considered.
Right.
And I would say absolve yourself of this burden. You are qualified by the very nature of the jobs that you do every day. And I think that many of the industries and categories where there are incredibly successful female executives are the ones that are becoming more and more important for board roles. It used to be that you could only have a finance background, or there's 70% of the board would have a financial services background. Marketing, design, technology, product, these things that are more deeply connected to your customer and how to grow your customer base, those things should be at the forefront. You also have a population in the United States that is incredibly diverse. And by 2040, the majority will be BIPOC and non-white. How will your board and your management team meet that customer? Are you prepared to do so? So I hope these are the questions that companies are asking themselves. And I think it kind of inevitably leads you to, if you want to grow and be profitable, that you should be making connectivity between that customer base and your management.
Well, Li, it's so great to speak with you, to hear about what you're building in Howl, to really hear about how you think about systems and communities and the future of social commerce. So thank you so much for coming here and speaking with us about this. I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with Li Haslett Chen. I really loved this conversation today, and I learned so much about what Li is doing to really bring inclusive voices to the social platforms and enabling them to reach more audiences and get paid for it. If you're enjoying our podcast, please hit follow on your favorite podcast app, and please share it with others. I hope today that you learned something that will help you to lead with purpose.